is just fantastic. Captain's Log, Subject 220125.6. Usually when a new inmate is initiated into the prison, they are assigned a position on that prison ladder. Rarely is someone designated unrankable. Today is an exception for an exceedingly good reason. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates numbers 112.1 and 112.2 to the ISO cubes. Their names are Savannah Brockhill and Frankie Smith. They are both serving lengthy terms for different crimes, but with the same victim. And if anyone can remember the Halls of Injustice concerning Arthur Hughes, you will then immediately understand how this is a rehash with multiple people failing fundamentally to protect an innocent. Crimes that were committed during the height of UK COVID lockdown. Crimes that deserve whole life terms. The victim is a young girl called Star Hobson. Star Hobson was 16 months old when she was cruelly taken from this world, and inmates numbers 112.1 and 112.2 are directly responsible for it. So first I'd like to tell you a little bit about Savannah Brockhill and Frankie Smith before we get into what it is they did, what it is they had done, and why it is I believe, without even giving you the context in advance, both deserve whole life terms for the crimes they committed. So if you did watch the Halls of Injustice from 3 weeks ago, consider this part your trigger warning because it's not going to be nice and it's going to get very dark. Savannah Brockhill was, at the time of meeting Frankie Smith, a 26-year-old bouncer that worked at a drag queen and karaoke bar popular in Bradford's gay and lesbian community. She was also an amateur boxer. In November 2019, one night while working the door, she claimed one of the revelers had flirted with her, a waif-like girl who was 8 years her junior, so 18 at the time, with model looks and luxuriant black hair. That person was Frankie Smith. At that time, Frankie Smith had a boyfriend, and they were partying together that night but had separated and gone off in different directions to party, that is. During that night, Frankie Smith and Savannah Brockhill had exchanged numbers, and within 2 weeks they had started dating. At the time, Savannah Brockhill had not been alerted to the existence of Star Hobson, who at the time was a 6-month-old baby. The relationship between Savannah Brockhill and Frankie Smith lasted 10 months. That relationship was described many ways, the first and obvious one being on-off. Others would include narcissistic, obsessive, and violent. And as Star Hobson was there while this was happening during lockdown, Star Hobson became the target for the aggression. So now you know a little bit about Frankie Smith and Savannah Brockhill. Now is a good time to talk about what it is they did, which led up to and include the crime they committed. For the crimes that Savannah Brockhill and Frankie Smith committed, we actually have a timeline that we can go through and embellish upon. On the 27th of January 2020, the first referral that predates coronavirus lockdown is made to social services due to concern for Star Hobson's well-being, which was made by Holly Jones, who was a friend of Frankie Smith's. In response to this, Bradford's Child Services visited Frankie Smith and Star Hobson twice. The reason Holly Jones made the referral is because she was frequently used for free babysitting, with Holly Jones telling the BBC that when social workers rang to say they were visiting, Frankie Smith would spend an hour cleaning Star Hobson and covering up bruises. In February 2020, Savannah Brockhill recorded a video calling herself the #1 psycho, with her then sending a message to one of Frankie Smith's sisters asking if Frankie Smith is cheating on her, saying, "I'm broken, I'll stab someone tonight, I swear." She threatened to then go and confront Frankie Smith, being quoted as saying, "I don't care about kids in the house. I will rage. F it. They're going to need police in the house to take me away." As lockdowns began in March of 2020, Frankie Smith got her own flat in Keighley, and on the 14th of March 2020, Savannah Brockhill punched Frankie Smith in the face, and later said, "It was just an accident, breh." On the 15th of March 2020, Savannah Brockhill texted her boxing sparring partner to say she tried to kill herself and Frankie Smith by driving off a a cliff, but decided to just give Frankie Smith a hiding, saying that she thinks she needs help mentally and that I'm out of control, honestly, I just can't, I just lose it. On the 20th of March, social services closed the case on Star Hobson. This is the first of 3 times they do this. On May the 20th, Anita Smith, Frankie Smith's grandmother, makes a referral to social services after learning that Brockhill had been restraining Star with a wrestling move called a slam choke, with a social worker visiting the same day. In June of 2020, Jordan Hobson, the father of Star Hobson, makes a referral to social services. The police visit and arrange for Star to have a medical examination at Bradford Royal Infirmary. Other referrals are also made by Frankie Smith's sister Alicia and a friend of Smith's mother, Rachel Whiteley. And on the 8th of July, because they somehow found nothing wrong, social services closed the case on Star. Skipping ahead to the 2nd of September, Frankie Smith's grandfather, Frank Smith, makes a referral to social services after seeing bruises on Star's face. Social services this time made an unannounced visit to the property, noting that the property was clean and tidy, but that Star did have a few bruises, with Frankie Smith indicating that Star had fallen down the stairs. I'm going to insert an interesting fact about that now. Star did fall down the stairs, because Frankie Smith and Savannah Brockhill recorded it, with them laughing in the background as she fell. It was one of many times Star Hobson had a minor accident that became something quite painful for her, whether that be her falling asleep in her high chair and then falling out of it. They recorded it, and then they would send it to their friends. Quality parenting, I know. On the 7th of September, social workers text Smith to say the case is closed. On the 13th of September, Savannah Brockhill is captured on CCTV assaulting Star at a recycling plant in Doncaster, where she was working. The reason she had her there was because Frankie Smith wanted to go out drinking. On the 20th of September, CCTV footage showed Frankie Smith dragging Star through Bradford city centre on her reins, with Star's head dropping to one side. And on the 22nd of September 2020, Star Hobson passed away. There are some more details I want to add here. There was a treatment akin to how Arthur Hughes was treated that needs to be referenced here. For example, Star Hobson, when she passed away, was 16 months old, yet for lengthy periods of time was made to stand facing a wall. Kids at that age can barely stand anyway. She was slapped, she was beaten, she was assaulted by Frankie Smith and Savannah Brockhill, and how she passed away goes back to the boxing training of Savannah Brockhill, because Savannah either punched or kicked her, and I'm going to quote what the coroner said, with all the force of a crashing car. While doctors tried to save her life, they found half her blood supply pooling in her abdomen, along with damage to her liver, pancreas, and kidneys. They also noticed after she had passed, she had many other serious injuries, which would include twice fractured legs, rib fractures, and a skull fracture. But these safeguarding checks yielded positive outcomes, and she got to stay with her abusers. So let's quickly have a talk about Bradford Child Services, shall we, before we move on to what happened next. In total, social workers visited the property on 4 occasions, closing the case 3 times, while the police also visited once. The current Prime Minister Boris Johnson described this as a shocking and heartbreaking incident, adding that lessons now need to be learned from the 2 child murders, this being Arthur Hughes and now Star Hobson. The Department for Education said it would not hesitate to remove child services control from Bradford Council if necessary, with an investigation and report due to be concluded and published at some point in January 2022, so this month at time of release. The Bradford Partnership, which has responsibility for children's safeguarding in the area, has apologised, and in a joint statement from the council, Bradford's Clinical Commissioning Group and West Yorkshire Police said they deeply regret that not all the warning signs were seen. So why is it Bradford's Children's Services cocked this one up? Well, you can track this all the way back to 2018, to be honest, because they were back then judged inadequate after an Ofsted inspection found significant weaknesses. And as a consequence for these significant weaknesses, a government-appointed commissioner has been overseeing the department since August of 2021. So now let's talk about what happened next. When Frankie Smith sat beside Star Hobson in hospital shortly after she had died, she saw fit to remark that she could be a tough one who played hard, and said that she had been too soft on her, which were comments that medical staff heard. On the day that Star Hobson was killed, Frankie Smith had told Savannah Brockhill that she was angry with Star for ripping up a prized souvenir, a Rubettes concert ticket that was autographed by her idol, which led to many to believe that that simple, trivial act was the catalyst that led to the murder. Both Savannah Brockhill and Frankie Smith were arrested and charged with murder. The charges do change though as time progresses. At the trial, Frankie Smith's defense made the point of referencing Frankie's low IQ and immaturity, indicating that she was still playing with baby dolls until well into her teens. She didn't go to pubs like other girls of her age and didn't date until she was mid to late teens. Also referenced was the fact that her father, who had passed away of a drug overdose last year, was a heroin addict who spent much of his time locked in his room, with their relationship becoming strained until the ages of 14 and 16 when she went to live with her grandmother. Savannah Brockhill comes from a family of gypsies who have actually done very well for themselves living on a £1.5 million compound in Lancashire, something that was referenced by family members of Savannah Brockhill, indicating that Frankie was a dosser. Okay. While Savannah did have an upbringing that was traditional for gypsies, she excelled at boxing and had in fact tried to get into the Olympic team but was wrecked by a car accident, instead taking on multiple jobs and also breeding Staffordshire Bull Terriers, making a considerable amount of money, which does, by the way, come into the fallout later. Before the trial even started, there were a number of delays. These delays were by Savannah Brockhill, because she'd been admitted to hospital with a number of mysterious problems, so naturally things took time to reach conclusions about that. Savannah Brockhill, aka inmate number 112.1, was found guilty of murder. Frankie Smith, though, was not found guilty of murder, but she was found guilty of causing or allowing Star Hobson's death. So with two guilty verdicts for two different charges, we now get to address the 1957 Homicide Act, which is certainly the law applicable to both Frankie Smith and Savannah Brockhill, but also the sentencing guidelines. For Frankie Smith, the maximum term allotted by the law is 14 years, and I, as many of you will know, fundamentally disagree with that. Doesn't matter how young she is, doesn't matter how diminished the responsibility is. For Savannah Brockhill, the sentence for murder, the maximum sentence is life, because in the case of murder, the judge must apply a life sentence and follow guidance on the minimum amount of time the offender must be in prison before being considered for release. And while there are aggravating and mitigating factors, none of them are applicable here. So yes, let's get to the sentences, shall we? Frankie Smith, aka inmate number 112.2, mother of Star Hobson, jailed for 8 years for allowing or causing the toddler's death. Savannah Brockhill, aka inmate number 112.1, sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 25 years. So essentially, she's doing the full sentence before being considered eligible for parole. My sentence is life, without the possibility of parole for both of them, along with immediate castration. But this story isn't over yet. While Frankie Smith has gone under the radar since being sentenced, Savannah Brockhill has not, because Savannah Brockhill is kinda living it up. So let's talk about the fallout. While Frankie Smith has flown under the radar, her sentence did not, and a decision on a review of the jail sentences is expected within the week. The Attorney General is currently examining the sentences handed to Savannah Brockhill and Frankie Smith under the unduly lenient sentence scheme after a referral was made following the conclusion of the case. Under the rules of the scheme, the Attorney General's office has 28 days from the date of sentence to make a decision on the case, which meant that they then had until January the 11th to make the decision. However, if it does go through the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal may decide that the sentence should stay the same, or whether or not the sentence is unreasonably low or simply refuse to hear the case. So what has Savannah Brockhill been doing since she was incarcerated? Well, she's been living it up in prison, as I earlier stated. In fact, she has used up her one allotted hour a day on the phone to give interviews from prison to places like the Daily Mail. Her prison cell is a single-person cell with an ensuite. She has a decent job with a woodland view where she can see the burbs. Something about that feels wrong. She's also, since being incarcerated, been spending tens of thousands of pounds on family members, buying them gifts which would include diamond-encrusted Rolex watches for her nephews. One of her fellow inmates claimed that Savannah Brockhill said she'd buried 3 more babies in a joke to other people in prison. No doubt somebody may well investigate that. Along with pointing out that Savannah is cold, callous, she's never seen crying. Along with claiming that she doesn't care anymore that inmates kick down her door and spit in her food. I wonder why she's being treated like that. Brockhill is also deluded. I used some of her references in this video, with the word allegedly being in the article pages themselves, I hope you noticed. And the reason why is because she intends to appeal her sentence, claiming that Frankie Smith was the one that committed the crime. Therefore, she should not be serving a life term for what she was convicted of, even though the evidence conclusively proved she committed the crime. Oh well, whatever makes your time behind bars go faster. As we are done with this, I would love to know what you all think. Please do leave a comment down below, even if it is just the word comment, along with your sentence as well. I'm sure many of you have a suggestion for both of them. Human centipede perhaps, or a snake eating its own tail. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and thank you all very much for listening.